This episode of Dispatches from Planet Albany is brought to you with support by New York State United Teachers, which represents more than 600,000 educators and school-related professionals in New York. If you're interested in how your business or interest group can support Dispatches from Planet Albany, contact david.lombardo@wcny.org. And if you're interested in personally supporting the show, visit capitalpressroom.org/donate. I'm David.
Sorry.
You can just look at me. You're good.
Sorry. Okay.
No, you're fine. Yeah, just
okay.
look at me.
Yeah.
Unless you want to turn and to the people.
Right.
But otherwise, just look at me, and you'll be all set. It'll be fine.
I've also declared war on potholes. So here's the first shot across the bow.
Well, as you know, with Planet Albany, there's always something that makes the planet turn.
And it's this amazing view of D.C., and Eddie Vedder comes out. And he goes, "You have a cigarette?" And I've never smoked in my life, but if I had, I wish that was the moment.
And this strategy takes us from potholes to knotholes.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim. But I'm on the road.
I'm David Lombardo, and this is Dispatches from Planet Albany, a WCNY podcast about power and politics in New York. And on this episode, we're checking in with Drew Warshaw, a veteran of Planet Albany, having worked in the Spitzer administration, who's now hoping to return as state comptroller, launching a Democratic primary challenge to incumbent Tom DiNapoli. What you're about to hear is the second half of a conversation we had, with the first half available on the Capitol Press Room feed, focusing on his policy vision for the office. This part of the discussion primarily focuses on politics and his personality. I hope you like it. So where does your understanding of the comptroller's office come from? You've got big plans, a big vision for this office, and because it's so different from the way the office has been utilized in the last 18 years, someone might say, can you even do all of this? So is this just you going through the state constitution and statutes and saying, hey, I think this is possible? Or have you talked to, I don't know, Alan Hevesy prior to his death, or somebody else to try to get a sense of, what can this office be?
To your point, I think about things really hard, and I'm not going to propose something that I'm not absolutely certain we can implement. I've looked at the state constitution. I've looked at the statutes. I've talked to many people who used to work at the state comptroller's office. All the things I'm proposing are well within the four corners of his authority. And that's what I'm talking about. That's the problem. I'm not actually trying to expand the power of the office. I'm just trying to use it for a direct and very focused idea, which is to drive down the costs to actually live in New York.
Sticking with the idea of power, you've made the point in an argument, you've made the point in an interview that the comptroller oversees our taxes, oversees our spending. Can you elaborate on what you mean with regards to those two claims? Because while the comptroller has the ability to, keep track of some of these spending initiatives and taxing initiatives, it's not like they have a check on what is being taxed or what is being spent.
Totally great question. So overseas is not the same as control, said differently. Mm-hmm. So he does not control the taxes. He does not control the spending. I think on the tax side, I think if we got rid of the DiNapoli tax and saved New Yorkers $55 billion, I think in that way he could control people's property taxes and state income taxes. But that aside, I totally take your point. This is where you have to use your voice. This is where it is a problem when the person who's supposed to be the independent auditor has been appointed by his colleagues from the state assembly on the thing he's supposed to be auditing. People may not realize this, but this job is supposed to be independent of the legislature. This job
he's been independently elected multiple times.
It's supposed to be independent auditor. And
2014, 2018, 2022. So he's been independently elected 4 times.
He has, without any opposition from the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. But, and I don't doubt this, the thing that everyone says about him, not, he manages the pension fund well or he uses the audit authority well, but that he's nice. And, that is, and I believe that. But you're supposed to be the auditor. You're not supposed to get the standing ovation at the state of the state from the people you're auditing. That is a signal right there. That is a giant red flag that the auditor who's supposed to be minding New Yorkers' money may not be minding it so hard. And after 18 years, even if you were, after 18 years, it is time for a change. It is time for a fresh set of eyes. Normally in the private sector, nonprofit sector, it is literally best practice to change out your auditor every 5 to 7 years, simply to get a fresh perspective, even if they're doing a great job, which, as I think we've talked about, when you look under the hood, his performance is really challenging. But even if he were hitting it out of the park, there's goodness, there is health in getting a fresh perspective in. And we live in a state of 19 million people. And basically what he is saying by running for a 6th term is there's not one other person out of those 19 million that could do this job better. And I think we're going to test that out.
Bold statement to make. I think he's arguing that he thinks he can do the job well. If you think you can do it better, challenge me. And
fair.
I want to talk about something you sort of hinted at, which is the way he got this office, which is he was the candidate pushed forward by the Assembly Democrats when he was a member of the Assembly in 2007 in complete opposition to your then boss at the time, Governor Eliot Spitzer. So I'm curious, what sort of baggage do you bring to this, given that animosity between the two initially?
Baggage from 20 years ago?
Sure.
When I was 25?
Exactly.
Fair question. The good news is that has 0.0 to do with it. And this is what I mean. We can quantify the performance of
But you weren't part of that at all? You don't remember it? It doesn't stick in your craw at all?
That was not something that I was involved in at all.
Okay.
I was the heads down person who was focused on getting stuff done, not the politics.
So have you spoken to the former governor about your comptroller run now?
I'm going to leave private conversations in private, but why
does that have to be private?
But what I will say is this is a job that you can quantify the performance. So regardless of what happened 20 years ago, 20 years later, we now see what has happened.
But why wouldn't you talk about whether you've sought counsel from a former governor who might have thoughts about the ability of the comptroller and what the job could be?
I don't think it's fair to the other person in a private conversation to give that up.
So does that mean those conversations have had and you just don't want to talk about them?
We've talked,
okay.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think it's a big deal. But
sure.
We've talked, but I think what's important is that 20 years later, forget what he said 20 years ago. We now know how he performed. So Eliot Spitzer back then said, I don't think he's going to perform well. He doesn't have a lot of experience. That was conjecture. He was projecting. We did not actually have a record. 20 years later, we actually have a record that you can quantify. 2 of the 3 things that are in the job jar of the state comptroller, managing the public pension fund and getting New Yorkers their unclaimed money back. The third lever is what you were mentioning earlier, is the audit. 2 of those 3 things we can quantify. The first, he underperformed his own benchmarks by 37%, costing taxpayers $55 billion. The second, he got into office, that number was $7 billion of New Yorkers' money, which was still too high. But since he's been there, that number has tripled, or nearly tripled, to $20 billion. So we don't have to worry about what a governor said 20 years ago. We can look at the guy's record now. Now we know whether he's done a good or a not good job. And when it comes to affordability and when it comes to people's wallets, we now know the answer.
When it comes to scrutiny for the state comptroller, why do you feel like the media maybe hasn't done all that they could do? Is it because he is that quote-unquote nice guy? Is it because our eyes glaze over when people start talking about pension fund returns? Why do you think he has not necessarily attracted the same level of scrutiny? And I'm probably guilty of that as well in my nearly 6 years here.
So I would ask you that question because you are part of the media. So I think you're a better position to ask why the media has not.
I mean, I kind of floated my idea. I think it's because he's a relatively nice guy, and it's like, oh my God, I'm going to go into a coma if we have to talk about 5% versus 6% versus whatever.
Right. So these are the things that get me excited because these are the issues that you can draw a direct line to people's wallets living in New York. And those people have fewer and fewer dollars to pay for things that are costing more and more. So that's something that gets me very excited. That, to me, is the greatest story that has not been told. I agree by the media. But I think probably, if I had to guess and put myself in your shoes,
please,
is he has not been indicted and he's not had a sex scandal.
Diano.
And
that would be enough.
And right. And exactly. And this might be a moment where we should expect more from the one of the most powerful offices in government that can actually do something about our affordability crisis. So not going to jail and not having a sex scandal, the bar has got to be higher than that. And you asked me to project, so like that wasn't even something I was going to talk about, but our bar has got to be higher. And after 18 years, we have a choice. We can give New Yorkers a choice. For the first time, there's going to be a second name on the ballot where they can choose between what they've seen for the last 18 years and a change candidate.
Speaking of the ballot, what do you see as your path forward to getting on the ballot? Because it is no easy challenge to actually qualify for a statewide primary like this. So what is that going to take? I think Politico reported back in May you had about $560,000 cash on hand. So, I'm going to imagine you're going to have to pay people to actually petition. So what do you view as your path forward?
He had $560,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oops.
No.
I'm guessing you had less than that.
It's okay. I had zero when I started. We now have more, thankfully.
How much money do you have on hand?
We have more than $1 million.
Congrats.
Yeah.
How did you get it?
Yeah. I think people are ready for change in New York, and they saw a candidate who was willing to use powers that we already have with a level of urgency to attack the affordability crisis. And I think people out there, whether it's in New York or across the country, are ready to do that.
Are you turning to people in New York so far for donations? Are you looking outside of New York? Where's the money coming from?
Wherever it can come from in the United States of America.
And getting on the ballot, what's that process look like?
Yeah, that's not simple, to your point. There are really just two ways you can get voted on by the Democratic Committee members of New York.
Which is not going to happen.
And I certainly hope, that they will do that. But
God forbid. If
you
it
predicted that is not going to happen, so let's assume that doesn't happen. Let's go and open door number 2. And door number 2 is a petitioning process.
Right.
And I plan to go to all 62 counties across the whole state to make sure that we get on that ballot. If the Democratic committee members don't want me on that ballot, that is their prerogative. I hope they do. I'm certainly going to ask for that. And if they don't, we have a way to petition our way on, and that's what we'll do.
Is matching funds critical to a meaningful primary campaign for you?
I'm so glad you asked about that, because public financing of campaigns is a issue that is very, very close to my heart. It is literally the issue that brought me into politics in the first place. The first time I ever came to Albany was to lobby for a public financing of campaigns bill when I was a student at Cornell.
What year are we talking? Generally speaking.
2001.
Okay. And leave it to the Cornell guy to work in a Cornell reference.
2002. We started an organization called Democracy Matters.
Okay.
And it was a nonpartisan student organization that still exists. And our only issue was we thought it was a pretty silly system to have public elected officials be elected through a system of private financing. It's still a silly system. And so we proposed a public financing bill, came to Albany to lobby for that bill, and thanks to my brothers and sisters who kept up that fight while I was building solar farms and rebuilding the World Trade Center, they kept up that fight. And several years ago, they were able to pass a public matching bill, not the full public financing bill that we advocated for 20 years ago, but a very robust public financing piece of legislation that without which I would have zero chance of being able to run for this. So that is part of the poetry of life. Life works in very difficult ways sometimes, but also very beautiful ways. And the fact that I'm able to run because this public financing program exists, we are able to have competition. We are able to challenge a candidate who's been there 18 years unopposed. And the reason is because those advocates pushed for a public financing bill that is going to allow me to run a competitive statewide campaign in the most expensive media market in the entire world.
Well, you're going to make ads, and you've got an ad, and I want to play a little soundbite, more because I'm interested in the tone of it.
So it's Friday, and that means it's payday. And every single week, 52 weeks a year, Tom DiNapoli gives Wall Street bankers, nearly 400 of them, $21 million to not do their job, to actually underperform their own benchmarks by 35%. Let's give it to them. $21 million to not do their job. Bullshit.
Now, what listeners aren't seeing in this little ad is that you've also got a novelty check that you're leaving down by Wall Street. Is this your actual personality? Is this something you're like, I'm comfortable doing this, I like doing this? Or is someone telling you, we need to go viral, we need to try to get some eyeballs, Drew, we're going to send you down to Wall Street, we've got a big check, we want you to do this, we want you to curse?
Sure.
Which is it? Is that you, or is that made up?
So a couple things. One, did your listeners hear the curse? Because I don't know what's allowed on...
This part will play for the podcast.
Okay.
So now we're on the podcast. If you want to drop an F-bomb, now's the time to do it.
Oh, wow. Well, now you're tempting me, but I probably won't go there. A couple things. So first, that is not an ad. That is a video. We're trying to raise money, not spend money right now.
Sure. But if you had those sweet matching dollars right now, I imagine there might be a social ad buy.
But what I wanted to say two things, because I want to answer your question about the tone.
Sure.
And is this me and all that. But first, I want to ask your listeners to go to @DrewForNY, whether it's Instagram or X or Blue Sky. You can find videos like this. Now, this video in particular was the first video of one that we are running every single Friday, because Friday, to most New Yorkers, is payday. And every single Friday between that video and Election Day, we are going to make sure that New Yorkers understand that on payday, Tom DiNapoli is giving $21 million of our taxpayer money. And it's simple math.
Sure,
it's the $1.1 billion divided by 52.
We talked about the fees. That will be in the whole policy discussion. Right. But this is, right. I'm curious about the authenticity of this. Can we talk about that a little bit? I mean, is this like the way you would approach things and the way you would talk about things?
I think that is who I am.
Yeah.
Look, I think the only thing that works in trying to compel and persuade and hope that people will find my candidacy important is to be authentic.
I was waiting for that A word. And we did affordability already.
Yeah,
the authentic word.
Yeah, you just have to be you. And this is me. And one of the great things about there are a lot of challenging things about running for office, as I've learned over the last 3 months. I have, Benjamin and Jacob, an 11-year-old and 7-year-old boys, and my wife Charlotte. I have seen a lot less of them over the last 3 months. So this is a hard thing to do. But one of the great things, one of the gifts or blessings of being able to run for office, there's no hiding. You are your full self. You are the full version of yourself. So you ask about where these ideas come from. They didn't come from a poll. They came from my brain. They came from caring, and they came from a lot of experience and a lot of work and a lot of hours between midnight and 6 a.m. looking at PDF documents and financial statements that you might actually read because you're hip on this stuff. But
I have no kids, that's why.
But most people, and I do, and so there's no getting around it. It's you. And so 100% that is me. That's a different version, a different side to the person who's sitting here right now and, asking these questions from a person 2 feet away from them. But one, you got to care. People say that ideas don't matter. That is a brutally cynical way to go about things. I think ideas really matter. And I think voters actually care about ideas. I think this is a huge idea to be able to cut out the Wall Street middleman. Now, to be able to get voters to pay attention and to see the connection between how we manage this massive public pension fund and their wallets, you have to meet them where they are. And where they are, and I hope a lot of them are listening to this, but where they are is not just on this show, right? It's on social media. We've seen this over and over again more recently, and if they're there, then I want to be there. And this is something that I think can communicate the message. I think it shows a level of urgency and giving a shit about New Yorkers' wallets.
You got into it.
And
the curse thing. Excellent.
And if you're standing next to a bull, and that's the famous, iconic Wall Street bull, I think you're allowed to say bullshit every now and then, because it is bullshit.
So it seems clear that social media has to be the way for a grassroots, low-budget campaign to meet voters, especially in the statewide nature. The reality is, though, on X right now, Drew for NY has 146 followers, and these videos, like the audio I just played, are not necessarily going viral. So is there a certain point where you have to bring on other people who can help you go viral? Is it just you hoping that you can figure out what the right formula is? What does that secret sauce look like moving forward?
Sure. Well, look, I sure hope I can tap into that algorithm that can, make something go viral. I think, look, we're in August.
Sure.
And we have many months before the election. So I am very confident that those social media accounts will hit, and the more listeners who listen to shows like this one and go to Drew for NY on all these social platforms, and if we said that over and over and over again, and everyone did, I would probably, I don't know, how many listeners do you have?
I know my mom's listening.
Hopefully would have thousands of followers at the end of the show, and I'm going to check my phone after the show, after it goes live, and I'm going to hope that thousands of people sign up for Drew for NY.
So obviously you want to win. If you don't win, are you satisfied if you are able to just change the way that Comptroller DiNapoli approaches this job? Is that a victory in and of itself? Because we've seen, say, in 2018 with Andrew Cuomo, when he got a primary from his lift, he began to moderate some of his positions. He sort of rethought his whole approach to marijuana. So is that something that you would like to see along the campaign trail as well, that maybe Comptroller DiNapoli is maybe responding to your issues?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm running to win this, but in the process, and this is why democracy is important and a healthy democracy requires primaries, we've already seen that it's working. He is already acting with more urgency than he ever has in his 18 years of trying to get money out of the unclaimed fund. Granted, he's also changed the website, taken down the fact that there's $20 billion in the unclaimed fund, which mysteriously disappeared when I started to talk about it. So, but we're already seeing a change of behavior. So that's all good. That is great. That should happen. Hopefully, I would hope he would look at all of these fees that he's paying these bankers. I would hope that he's pushing his people to better understand, are we really beating our own benchmarks? I would hope he's doing all those things, but I am not. My strategy is not hope. We are going to win this. We're going to create a movement that over the next year is going to take this thing, and I'm very, very confident that we're going to get out there and do it.
State Comptroller Tom DiNapoli was unwilling on our show after the primary to endorse New York City Democratic mayoral nominee Zoran Mamdani, who a current assembly member. You've made no bones about the fact that he's your party's nominee. Yeah, you're supporting him. I'm curious, did you rank Mamdani in your primary ballot this summer?
So I am not going to tell people my ranked choice voting because I am going to be the next mayor's auditor. What I will say, and what I will not hedge, and to your point, he came on the show and wouldn't answer this question, is of course I'm going to support him. He is the Democratic nominee. Why is that
different than not saying whether you ranked him or not?
I am because he is now the Democratic nominee.
Sure.
I am trying to be the Democratic nominee. It would be pretty arrogant, and I think of me and others to, in seeking your own party's endorsement when more than 1 million people came out and voted in that election, and the vast majority, that was not a close election, and the vast majority of Democrats who I am asking for their vote voted for him, to then turn around and go, I don't know, to then turn around and say, I'm not going to answer the question. I think this is the problem with career politicians, and this is the challenge.
I don't know. This sounds like a kind of a career politician answer.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is why do you
that you won't tell us whether you ranked him or not?
Oh, but I'm literally going to be the auditor of the. I do not want that. That is a sacrosanct thing.
Is he going to call you? He's going to be like,
I can't have
Drew,
someone.
Bubala,
I cannot
you
have someone question and be like, look, he was your number 1 guy, or he was your number 5th guy. So therefore, you're going to give him a hard time if he's your number 5 instead of your number 1, or you're going to let him off the hook because he was your number 1. So no, I don't think that's evading at all. You asked me if I'm going to support the Democratic nominee.
You already said you would.
100%, absolutely. And what I said, it sounds like a career politician, is when you can't even do that. And Tom DiNapoli can't even do that. He's been elected by Democrats, and he can't even respect the Democratic voters who voted in record numbers in New York City. He can't respect them enough to say, yeah, okay, we respect democracy. And that's part of the challenge. This is where, and this is a bit off topic, but there's a lot of talk about democracy in this country right now, and there needs to be, and there has to be. But you can't be for democracy in certain cases and against it in other cases. And when your own party, in record numbers, goes out and votes for someone, and then you go, I don't know what they were talking about. Or you refuse to answer the question. Or you say, oh, there's plenty of time, when there's not plenty of time. I think that was how he answered the question. There's just
We also said he had some outstanding concerns.
A bunch of weeks to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are we doing? Like, this should not be hard. We need to be focused on solving the affordability crisis. This guy put his finger on the affordability crisis. That is why he won. That is why I am running, is because New Yorkers cannot afford to live in New York. And Tom DiNapoli has all this power, and he is not doing anything about that crisis.
What do you think about the way the comptroller has used his pension fund to actually divest from the parent company of Ben & Jerry's when they had some policies that Israel was not super pleased about? Is that something that you would use the fund to do as well? And, I mean, how do you think about our relationship to Israel? Is that a meaningful issue?
Yeah, I think divestment, you have to have a very, very clear and transparent framework for divestment. And the only way you can divest, or invest for that matter, is based on your fiduciary obligation. Is this going to make sense to the taxpayers who fund the pension fund and the public employees who benefit from the public pension fund? It is this person's job to make sure that we get the highest possible return for the lowest possible tax on New Yorkers. So that is the only prism that we should be thinking about investing and divesting. If it makes fiduciary sense, if it makes financial sense for our public employees and the taxpayer, we invest. And if it doesn't, we divest. That has to be the only prism, because that is our legal obligation and that is our sacred obligation to New Yorkers.
What if that means, say, investing in fossil fuels, for example, because there's a good rate of return, at least for now? Is that something that makes sense? Or would we say we as a state have green goals and thus we should divest from these, or invest in other green things that we want to promote even if there's not that good ROI?
There's only one prism. It has got to make financial sense for the taxpayer and for public employees. If it makes financial sense to get out of fossil fuels, we get out of fossil fuels. If it doesn't, it doesn't. We've got to make that case. And that's the only standard there is. That is the job. That is the job. We have that not only as a legal obligation, but like I said, in a raging affordability crisis, we better make sure that we are getting the highest return for the lowest possible tax dollars. And that is the prism.
What do you think of Governor Kathy Hochul?
I am so focused on Tom DiNapoli right now and quantifying his performance, as I said, that has been my focus. But, I think most recently her focus, we talked about democracy. You take a look at what they're doing in Texas, which is like one of the most anti-democratic things that you could possibly do. I think for her to step up to the plate and say, look, this is the last thing we want to do. We do not want to go mid-cycle for redistricting, but if states across the country are going to start to do that, we cannot unilaterally disarm. We've got to do that too. And good for her for stepping up and doing that.
Well, we've been speaking with Drew Warshaw. He is a candidate for New York State Comptroller. Drew, thank you so much for making the time and putting up with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, David. It was fun.
I'll fuck you up during the interview. That'll be the real problem. Here we go.
I've watched your interviews.
That's easy.
Every now and then you just sort of throw it. Do you believe in God?
What happens when we die? Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're prepared.
Yeah.
Critical thinking skills.
I would love to talk about God, actually.
Okay.